Today, everyone is joining the call and the webinar. So thank you very much. This webinar is based on working from home and collaboration made easier. So this morning, looking after the technical side of things on our demonstration is Jonathan Geffen. So Jonathan, he's put his camera on now. Did you maybe want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Harry, and welcome everyone to our webinar. This is our first webinar actually for Fusion 360 for our European team, so I'm quite excited about that. So as Harry mentioned, I'm the technical sales specialist on our team, and I've worked for Autodesk for the past 2 years, better part of 2 years, with my background being in industrial design actually. So creating products and bringing them to market, I've experienced many challenges collaborating with different stakeholders, and I'm excited to share with you, together with Harry, what we have to offer with Fusion 360.
Awesome, thanks, Jonathan. And yeah, and another person who you've got to deal with today is myself. So I've worked at Autodesk for very nearly 5 years, one more month and it's 5 years. Throughout my time here, I've looked after our manufacturing portfolio, and now for just under a year, I've spent looking after our Fusion 360 UK-based customers. So let's get started, and I'm going to get started straight away with some threats to the manufacturing industry. I think it's worth talking about these because I think they're quite relevant for everyone here today. So the first one is talking about pace of change. And what I mean by pace of change is companies are constantly evolving nowadays. They're entering new products far quicker than they have done previously. They may have been able to do it in different areas like lighter or better materials. And what this means is it normally means they can come out cheaper. So for you, it just means you have to be constantly on your toes and you're constantly coming up with new innovating ways of actually trying to work. Then there's the things like competitive threats, a relatively obvious one. But again, something we should talk about in terms of with software, tools, and space as well becoming more readily available and, dare I say, cheaper, it means that small businesses are able to have access to this. And it just means that competition is constantly rising out of nowhere. And then lastly, there's the idea of supply chain and the volatility of that supply chain. So here we're talking about higher costs of suppliers, complex logistics. I'm sure a lot of you are probably experiencing this right now in the situation we find ourselves. Other areas like increasing commodity prices as well. So like I said, all things that you're probably aware of, but I think it's something we should talk about. And I said, I don't want to start this whole thing by saying that massively bleak, but I think it's worth talking about because all it means is we now need to start thinking about a new way of thinking. And so here at Autodesk, and myself included, what we believe is the new possible and the new way of thinking is having every single person and every single machine, along with all the activities, working in unison. And so in today's world, like I say, we see many different threats, one much like we're in right now, but from these threats, there are also opportunities for us to actually look to grow. So when we start talking about things like smart products and what opportunities this actually gives us, well, it means that you can actually look at your products you have right now and perhaps look to try and give them better reliability or aim to have higher product utilization. Overall, what you're then doing is actually creating a much better customer experience. Then furthermore from that, you have the ability to try and drive more efficiency and actually reduce costs. So you could look to try and use a single tool to help improve workflows between different areas. I mean, again, like all of our situation right now, we're having loads of different people spread about the entire of the UK, maybe even the world. So it's trying to find different ways to improve workflows. And ultimately what this means is, again, you're having a better customer satisfaction. You're no longer going to have certain delays or products won't go to market that shouldn't have gone to market. So all the whilst you're improving that customer satisfaction, you're then also starting to save money and time. And then finally, the opportunity to ensure flexibility within your supply chain actually allows you to be proactive as opposed to reactive. And it also gives you the ability to have to be more flexible to complex consumer demands. So I'm sure some of you have seen this slide before. If you haven't seen this slide before, I'm almost certain that it's going to resonate with you right now, especially with, like I say, where everyone is probably going to got staff at home, based on the very few staff in the office. This workflow probably looks like something that you're currently used to. And so what we're talking about here is the idea of, the different pieces of designs and information going between procurement, design, engineering, manufacturing. If we take, for example, an engineer, what we say is that 30% of that engineer's time is actually wasted on tedious tasks, such as looking for the right version of a file, making sure things have been signed off where they should be. And quite simply, as you can see by the slide, everything is very messy. And all this means is it's painful and results in all sorts of issues. Most of those issues then end up being quite costly. And all this is doing is limiting our customers' ability to actually then make changes that you need in order to survive, let alone actually grow. So to combat these challenges and actually ensure that we can start to capitalize on that ongoing convergence of design and manufacturing, there's definitely a need now to actually connect and automate design and manufacturing processes so that we can actually then look to reduce iterations, errors, and improve delivery times. Furthermore, if we look at things like advancements in cloud computing and mobile technology, in conjunction with automation, we're able to bring new means of collaborative working, to manufacturing. So Fusion, to take advantage of this shift, we've actually built Fusion in a way to reimagine the product development process and provide people with access to their data in a connected, flexible, and seamless way. So to do this, we've brought technology together that's previously been delivered separately. And we're also then starting to invest rapidly in intelligent means of automation. Furthermore, Fusion's been architected, and the software inside it has been architected in a way that collaboration is a natural part of the design and manufacturing process. And all this means is that we're positioning you to then start working in new ways in an industry where there's no other software vendor, or at least that I'm aware of, that has this type of planned out strategic approach. And it means we can provide you with the technology to actually take advantage of the next generation workflows available inside Fusion. So, like I mentioned right at the start, we need to find a new way of thinking and a new possible. And we believe Fusion 360 is that new way of thinking, that new possible. It enables product designers and manufacturing innovators to actually achieve this new possibility in the way that they imagine, collaborate, and then create. It allows businesses the agility and connectivity to meet growing demands, allowing you to spend more time on innovating as opposed to iterating. It gives you the ability to actually achieve the new possible in ways that better your business to shape a much more thriving future. And just touching on one of the final things here is one of Fusion 360's great capabilities is its flexibility. And by flexible, I mean, it really is like a flexible piece of software. So you have things like the flexible subscription model, where we're able to go from 1 month to a year to 3 years. You can switch it on and switch off whenever you feel like. You've got flexible account management and CAD/CAM modeling. The operating systems you can work on Windows and Mac, or even if you want to, your mobile, your phone, tablet, whatever it is you may be. Because your data is stored in the cloud, you can access this from anywhere. So even if you go to a customer and you haven't got your laptop with you, you can just log onto a web browser with your username and password and just show them what you want to show them on Fusion 360. And then finally, and a good handover point here for Jonathan, the idea that you've all joined is the flexibility of remote working and remote working environment, because you can access that data from anywhere on any device. And so with that, I'd like to hand over to Jonathan, who will take us through the technical side of this and show you all Fusion 360.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Harry, for that awesome introduction. And as Harry mentioned, we'll be looking at several different points inside Fusion and inside Fusion Team. And we'll be doing all of this live because otherwise it wouldn't be as exciting and not as compelling, I think, to show you what the software actually does for you and how reliable these cloud services are. So just a brief overview over the topics that we'll be covering now, which is, first of all, we'll look at what accessing wherever you are actually means. We'll have a look a little bit at the licenses and the system requirements for Fusion that you require. What teamwork means with Fusion and Fusion Team and how that can make your dream work. What the power of the cloud can offer you for your day-to-day work. How you can work with anyone and any existing data using the technology called AnyCAD. You can even work offline, even though this is a cloud-connected tool. And then at the end, I'll give you a brief little peek into our roadmap, which is actually a big part of how we communicate with our customers, because we like to be open and engaging with our community. So let's look at what we mean by accessing wherever you are. So Fusion, different to traditional CAD software, is cloud-based, and that means that your license is actually attached to your Autodesk account. So that means if you want to log into Fusion, you actually use a username and a password instead of using some serial keys or dongles that you would have to pass around in past times. What this also enables you to do is that you can actually sign in on different computers at the same time. You can work always on one computer at the same time. But let me give you an example of a scenario. This happened to me quite a bunch of times in the past, which is you're working on something in the office in your CAD tool of choice, and then you go home, you're done for the day, and at home you realize, oh no, I need to make a change for the presentation tomorrow. So you try and log on to your software, but you can't because you're still logged in to your software at work. So this is actually something that Fusion can completely deal with, because you have a session management, which means you can actually decide then, once you log on at home on your computer, to just pause the session at work and continue working as if nothing happened continuously on your computer at home. Also, the license management is done centrally and remotely. So for you admins out there who are actually managing all of the licenses that your team members are using, you can assign these licenses from a central position inside the Autodesk account page. And of course, your data is only accessible by the team members that are actually inside your team and inside your projects. And we'll look at the details of that in a second as well, of the granularity of control that you can have over who accesses your data. Regarding system requirements, we get asked this a lot, actually, and I see this question a lot on forums, being asked like, hey, what computer should I get for Fusion? And actually, Fusion requires much lower system requirements than traditional CAD packages, because it's just built in a new way. It's built on a new architecture, so it can leverage multiple cores and of course, outsourcing certain very resource-intensive tasks to the cloud. So that also means you don't have to worry about so-called approved hardware, where you would need a specific graphics card in order to qualify for support or something. And as Harry mentioned, you can work on a PC or a Mac, so it's platform independent. There are even apps for iOS and Android for viewing and collaboration, for commenting and things like that. And you can even work offline for up to 2 weeks if you need to. But when you jump back online, then you can, of course, leverage the amazing advantages of cloud processing. And now just one last slide before we actually jump into the software, which is that teamwork, collaborating in a team, can make your dream work, and it usually does, but oftentimes there are roadblocks to the teamwork. So how do you usually access your data? How do you access your versioning? And Fusion Team is the backbone of how Fusion works and works collaboratively. So you can manage permissions, files, versions, markups, comments, all from one single place. And you can connect teams across departments and multiple locations because it's cloud connected. So let's dive into Fusion right now. And I will show you this certain design here that I have open, which is this pump assembly. And I'm working on this pump assembly collaboratively with my colleagues. So I have certain team members, and I can see here a comment actually just popped up just this second. This is live. My partner, Michael, just made a comment over here 15 seconds ago, and I can open this up in my comment section on my CAD tool. If I click on that comment, it'll actually take me to the location where Michael made this comment, and if I open this up, it lets me view this in one-to-one to see what Michael actually wants me to do. So he said, hey, can you please reduce the size of those fillets over here? So let's go ahead and do this. First of all, let me maybe just pop out this comments window over here and say, sure, I'll work on it, and post that back. So this lets Michael know already that I'm actually going to start working on this. And then I can dive into this main body where he wants me to make an edit and actually edit this in the place of the context of the assembly without actually having to open up this part separately. I know that the fillets are controlled by this little feature here in the timeline. So let me just open that up and reduce that down to maybe 4 millimeters. All right. And so now my fillets are reduced. I can finish my edit in place and maybe zoom into here and open up my comment section and take a quick screenshot over here. Maybe point to a specific part of the model and say, hey, Michael, I can actually comment him in there, so he will definitely be notified. I made the change. Does that work? And then I can post this comment back, so he will be notified in either Fusion if he's working on it, or Fusion team. And this is how I can already collaborate on the data that I'm actually working on. And these comments refer to the versions of the file. So let me open up the data panel on the left-hand side. And this is your connection to your data because, as I said, Fusion is a cloud-connected tool. So that means the software itself is installed on your computer, and all of the design areas and the rendering and animation, simulation, manufacturing, you can do all of this from the comfort of your hardware and your PC. And your data gets synchronized with your cloud. So over here in my data panel, you can see that on the top-hand side, I am working in a team account, which is called EMEA Fusion 360 Technical Sales. That's where I do all of my technical sales demos. And I'm actually part of several other teams. So Fusion, every Fusion license comes with the ability to create one team. And with every Fusion license, you can participate in any other team that another user might have. So that means you can collaborate with anyone who has Fusion worldwide, no matter their location or the company even. I'm organizing my projects here in these projects that I can easily open up, create new projects, and I've pinned a couple of projects. So this one right now that we're working on is the collaboration webinar, and inside here I've got the pump that we've currently got open here on the right-hand side. And you can see I've already played around quite a bit with this model to create it and make some edits. This is actually already the version number 10 of the model that I've been creating. So if we open up the file, we can have a look at all of the 10 different versions that I created. And you can see that Fusion has automatically recorded at what time these versions were created and by whom. So that gives me an auditable trail of my design history. And at any point in time, if I need to, I can actually promote earlier versions to the top, or convert them to be milestones if I think that this is a very important change to the design. I have a little bit more granularity, which is I can have a look not just at the history, but I can also see what other parts is my assembly using over here, and I can open them up straight from here. So there's a connectivity between parts and assemblies. I can see whether this assembly is used in another assembly, which this one isn't, and I can have a look whether there are any drawings attached. And actually here there is a drawing attached. And I would like to have a look at this content of my Fusion team and of my files on the web. So I have different options to access this. If I want to access just this one file, then I can view the details on the web from here, or I can view the details of my project on the web from over here, or if I want to see the whole team, I can access this on the web over here. So let's do just that, and I will switch over to the browser where it's just opened up. So here I am now inside my Fusion team, and you can see these are all of the projects that I'm currently working on. So let's dive into the collaboration webinar, and you will see over here that the page for the webinar project is set up in a couple of different environments. For one, we've got the content that we're working with. So I can see here, I can organize my files into folders. I've got a trash bin where I can revive deleted files if I need to. And I can even upload different file types that don't necessarily have to be Fusion. So you can upload any file type that you like and use these inside Fusion Team as a data storage. In the second tab over here, I can see which project members are part of my project that I'm working with. So in here, I can see I've got 4 different people, 3 colleagues that I invited. And if I wanted to, I could, for example, set Harry to be a viewer in here. And then he would only be able to view the files, but not make any edits. But I'm going to revert that. I want him to be able to make edits. In the wiki pages, you have the possibility to create kind of a documentation of the projects that you're working with, which can be quite powerful if you want to document certain policies around the project or certain information that is necessary for the project. So I've, for example, entered here the titles and description of this webinar because that's the project that we're working in right now. Let's look at a little bit more of Fusion Team over here, and we'll start off on the top-hand side, which is, for one, of course, you've got a search area. So if you wanted to, you can search for the pump, and it'll show every file type that references this text string with pump. So I can go straight from here into the pump assembly if I need to, and open that straight up, and that's the assembly that we were just working on. Also, I can view any jobs that are currently processed. So that would be any file translations, for example, or renderings, things like that. I've got a notification bar of recent changes that were made, and of course also a help button that allows me to access help straight away or go to the forums, ask the community. As I said, we're very open with our community. We love when people tell us ideas for the products that we should work on. And if you need a walkthrough through Fusion Team after this webinar, still then you can access that from here. And then on the very right top-hand side, you've got your profile, which gives you access to, again, the different teams that you're a part of. The desktop connector for Fusion, which I'll show you a little bit later on how that works. And from here, you can access, for example, your Autodesk account, where you can manage the licenses, any updates that you're doing. You can assign licenses to several users if you need to. Then you've got your settings tab, which is where you would set up your default team, for example. So I want my default team to be the EMEA technical sales team. And I've also got a personal hub where I can work on my personal projects. And if I want to, also I can leave any teams that I was made part of if I need to. Just a short note on preview. I've turned this preview on, which gives me access to my projects on the left-hand side. If you disable this, then you will not have this navigation panel. And this kind of theme of enabling you to preview functionality is quite common in Fusion. Let's have a look also at the admin tab. And over here, we can see we can set the team settings. So any team name changes, whether I want to allow my team members to be able to share files with external collaborators, and whether it is necessary for team members to be invited and actually approved to join my team. And of course, I want this because I don't want anyone to be able to join my team. Then I can check out here the members and roles of active participants, for example, whether there are any pending invitations or sent invitations that haven't been accepted yet by the people that are working in my team. And I've got the same granularity with projects that I'm working with. So here again, I can have a look at the active projects I'm working on. And if I need to, I can also archive any of the projects or manage the roles or even transfer the project to a different team if I want to. So these are all of the settings that you have inside inside Fusion Team. But of course, you can also set up the project individually. And this is important because you wouldn't always want everyone in your team to have access to all of the projects that you're working with. Maybe you're working in different departments and separate departments are working on different projects. So you can set up your teams to be one of 3 types. Either you have a project that is open, so this will be viewable and joinable by anyone on the team. If you elect it to be a closed project, then the team members in your team can see those projects, but they cannot automatically join. So they have to be approved by someone inside the project. And you can also elect secret projects. And that means that these projects can only be joined by invite, and they cannot even be found by team members that haven't been invited to your project. I'll set this to be closed for now, and I have pinned this so it's always accessible at the top of my project list, and I can also elect to follow this this project if I want to be notified of any changes. And again, here I can switch over to the project members if I need to. In addition to the details of this project, I can also see the activity that was done inside this project. So you can see there have been a lot of changes and updates done to this project, and this is where we can track that that activity. So this is basically already Fusion Team, and this is the backbone again of making that collaboration work. Now let's have a look at what the power of the cloud means and how it enables you to effectively collaborate also with outsiders. You can share designs instantly with stakeholders without them even needing any CAD tool. You have a built-in file conversion, so you don't have to export files to certain versions for them to be downloaded. You can even host non-Fusion files if you want, compare versions, and you can comment, markup, and add mention these team members as I showed you before. So let's jump back into Fusion and have a look at how we would do this over here if we wanted to share this assembly with someone else. On any Fusion file, you can just right-click and elect to share a public link. And this allows you to share an always up-to-date link, which will always refer the most up-to-date version of your file with anyone who has this link. You can select whether this should be able to be downloaded or not. And if you want to or you need to, you can also set a password to specifically secure this link, so only people with a password can edit it. So let's copy this link over here, and I will open up a different browser now over here, which lets me show you what this would look like when someone accesses your link without you actually being logged in. So let's see over here, and let's actually open up a new incognito window because I seem to be still logged in over here. This will let you access your file and view your data straight on the browser. And this works actually from any web browser, even if it's on a mobile device, if it's on a tablet, you can view your design in 3D without even having to install any plugins or anything. This viewer is not just a viewer, but it actually enables you to do things like create measurements. You can create section views to look inside your model and see what's actually going on inside. Explode your model if you want to see all of the components that are inside. You can dive into each one, look at the properties of each component, the mass and volume, etc. And so you have a lot of capabilities here inside Fusion Team, even for external collaborators. Now let's just switch back to my own Fusion Team where I'm logged in, and I will show you a little bit more about this this project coordination. So I'm now in the pump folder, and if I scroll down, you can see actually that this pump assembly is currently open and in use by me because I've got it open in Fusion Live at the same time. So this allows you to control who is currently working on which file, and if needed, you can use this to elect maybe not to edit this file while it's in use. If we look at each of these files, we can see, of course, the connected parts that are associated with this file, whether there are any drawings attached, like here, for example, there's a drawing in here. There's actually a rendering also part of this, which is saved alongside. Also, an animation is inside here, which I could view if I wanted to. On the right-hand side, we've got our comment section with the comments that we just made a little earlier. And if I view this file again over here, then we have the possibility to, again, view our entire design in 3D. And if we want to, even say, let's export this to a different file type. And this is exactly what that being able to download files from the shareable link will do as well for your customers. So they can elect to download different file types, even though you haven't even exported them to a different format yet. So this can be quite powerful. I know that in the past, I used to just share a screenshot with someone and say, hey, this is the file, and then have to export like a step file so it's universally understandable. And then maybe something will be updated in the meantime, so I have to send another step file, and this can be quite tedious and slow as well, especially if the files are quite large. So this is a great way of collaborating with each other on these files. Also, while you're in here, you have access to different versions of the files if you need to. So you can view all of the different versions of this file, and you can see I've actually got a milestone over here where I added this sort of flywheel on the side. And if I want to, I can even go inside and compare versions and select which versions do I want to compare. So for example, maybe I'd like to compare version 9 against version 8, and I want to view the design changes that were made. So it will take in both of these versions and then show what was actually added or whether any files were removed, whether I've modified anything, and I can dive into each one of these components and see which changes were actually made. So that gives you a great method of tracking which changes are made live with the versions that you're creating from Fusion. Just a side note, please, if you do have any questions, and I'm not seeing it right now, but if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to post them in the questions and answers tab. And if there are...
Sorry, John, I was just going to say there actually is a question.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, no, so one of the questions was, whilst we were, let me just bring it up. So when you're doing the comments and putting them to people, there was a question regarding, can you give a comment a status? So if you like a small task, can you see if it's new, finished, or reviewed, or something along those lines, so you know comments are handled?
Right. So this is actually a great point, because this goes into data management and even into lifecycle management of your product data. And I will give you a little preview of what's on the roadmap for this, because right now we cannot release or set different states for files yet, but this is actually one of the biggest areas, if not the biggest area, for Fusion development as of right now for this year. And you can expect a lot of improvements to the data side and the lifecycle side of Fusion. So this is something that will be integrated in the future. Yeah.
Got it.
Great. Any other questions that have arisen so far?
But there was one question I think you kind of already answered, but it was basically if you opened a non-Fusion file, i.e. AutoCAD 3D or Inventor, edit within Fusion, and then save to the cloud again, does this change that file type, or does it distort it in any way?
Perfect. That's exactly the right cue for the next slide, actually.
There you go, perfect.
This is the technology that we call AnyCAD. And what AnyCAD actually does is it doesn't just let you open and convert over 50 different file types natively, but it actually lets you keep associativity from imported file types from Inventor, SolidWorks, Creo, NX, Solid Edge, Steps, and IGES file formats. So what this means is, and to me, when I saw this the first time, it was quite mind-bending, because I hadn't seen any technology do this as associatively before. What this means is, let's jump back into Fusion over here and jump out of this public link. I actually have a file over here that someone sent me, which is a SolidWorks file. And this SolidWorks file, if I show you the versions of these different file types, you will see that this is still currently a solid part file. This hasn't been converted in any way yet. Once I double click this file, it actually creates a Fusion readable and manageable file, which I can work on. So if I open this up, this is a clutch cover for a motorbike, and this is still referring to the original solid part file. So what I've done over here is I've actually gone into the manufacturing environment, and I've created a quick setup with a bunch of tool paths to actually cut out this part. So if I want to, I can go ahead and simulate this. Let's turn on some of these parts here, and I can have a look how this part is being slowly cut out. And I've spent a fair amount of time on creating the toolpaths because, of course, these are multiple operations, multiple different tools. I need to manage my library, etc., in order for this to actually work and be able to be manufactured. Now, what happens if at the last moment, and I know this, it always happens at the last moment, at the most inconvenient moment, my colleague says, hey, you know what, I made a mistake with the file. We actually need to change something before we go into manufacturing. And I've already spent a bunch of time on this file creating those toolpaths. So because I have used this imported solid part and I haven't actually converted it to any other file type, I can now switch over to my Explorer. And over here, I have what I briefly showed you in the Fusion team. Let me jump back here and show you where that is located. So you can go over here and download the desktop connector for Fusion. What this does is it basically mounts the Fusion projects as a virtual drive on your Explorer. So you have access straight from inside here. You can go into my team here. I have my collaboration webinar in here and the AnyCAD file that I was just working on. And in my second browser window here, I have actually the second version of this clutch cover that was sent to me as a change. So let me just copy this and paste it in here. Control V, and then it'll ask me, do I want to copy all? Yeah, let's copy all. And the desktop connector will automatically upload this file and then push it to my Fusion team. So if we switch back here to Fusion, now you can see that data has been renewed. There's now a version number 4 of this file. And if I jump back into the design environment, I can just say, hey, this component is out of date. Let's pull in the new version. And I can see here in a second that the angle of this top pocket will have changed once it's pulled in the new version. So you could see here it bringing in the new type. It's just currently downloading it, and here now this angle has changed. And because I've already spent so much time on manufacturing, now all of my toolpaths are out of date because they're referencing the old pocket, of course. But because Fusion is working associatively with the different file types, all I have to do is just right-click and elect to generate, and it will regenerate all of the toolpaths based on the geometry changes that I made with the new version, without me even having to convert the original file type to a Fusion file. So everything has adapted correctly, and I can now go to manufacture. And that is the real huge power of Fusion, that you can work collaboratively, even with existing data, or as we all know, we live in environments where we also have to deal with different data formats and different software types. So this is exactly that AnyCAD functionality and what it does. I hope that answered the question.
I think it definitely has done. Actually, just whilst we're on that, John, there was just one more that popped up.
Yeah.
And it's more about usability in terms of Fusion. It was more, if you know other software such as PowerShape, for example, how similar would Fusion be to kind of pick up and work with? I know it's been not quite our topic today, but
right, sure. So actually, this is a good topic because Fusion is a very powerful tool, as I hope I've already been able to show you. It has a lot of areas and a lot of tools, but it does, in comparison to other tools, especially to traditional CAD tools, seem a little simpler, whereas the functionality is actually just as or even more powerful. The reason being that Fusion was built up from the ground up completely new, and it's just a very modern tool to work with. what's really great about Fusion is that it kind of explains itself in the usage. So whenever I hover over any feature that I'm using, it explains itself, so I don't have to have a help file open at the same time. For example, if I go into manufacturing, and I know that this can be quite intimidating for some people to move into these areas, and you don't quite know what does this do, then there are extensive tooltips that explain exactly what the software is doing, and which areas you can change, or what that actually means, your settings. So you're basically learning the tool while you're working, and that's really the best way to learn. In addition to that, we have up here our little help file, where we can open up a learning panel that gives you access to in-product tutorials. And also you've got the learning and documentation page, where I would suggest going to the self-paced learning, which is a collection of learning paths that you can go through at your own pace, learning Fusion really from the ground up. And of course, there's also a learning path around administration and Fusion team, and introduction to Fusion modeling, transitioning from other software types, and anything, of course, in mechanical assemblies, generative design, product design with electronics, simulation, manufacturing, etc. So there's a lot of resources here for you to easily learn Fusion and adopt it as your CAD tool. So let's move to the next point, which is offline work. And I know that this happens sometimes, especially as you're working from home. You cannot always guarantee that your fuses won't blow or things like that, and maybe your internet connection will die. This has happened to me in the past. And most of the times when we talk to customers and they hear cloud, they're afraid that they require the cloud to be able to design and continue to work on their designs. And in Fusion, that's not the case, because you can actually, if you want to set your status to offline, or if you don't have an internet connection, you will be working offline. And in that case, you will have all of the projects that you have cached for offline use available to you. So if I want to, I can add, for example, this file here to my offline cache, or I can add an entire folder to my offline cache, or even my entire project. So if I want to, I can add all of the projects, all of the data that I'm working with to my offline cache, which will enable me to continue to work even when the internet connection is out, or if you're on the go and don't have an internet connection, and you still have all of the tools available to you inside Fusion that you need to continue to work on your design. So once you go back online, so let's actually just quickly make that switch. We can decide now to work offline. Let's have a look which files are available over here. These ones, because I'm working on them recently, are all, of course, available. But if I had any file types, let's have a look if we've got anything. These ones here, for example, are not available offline because I haven't cached them. So once we go back online again, Fusion will then take all of the changes and all the versions that you might have created during your offline period, and then upload them and synchronize them with your Fusion team completely effortlessly. Now, while this is going back online, let's go to the next area here, which is the cloud services. And this is also part, of course, of the power of the cloud, which is that there are certain elements inside Fusion that you can use the cloud for, where you don't have to rely on your computer hardware, and certain areas of Fusion where you need the cloud as well, because those types of tasks are usually so resource intensive that consumer grade PCs just wouldn't be able to handle them. So cloud services leveraged by Fusion are generative design, rendering, and simulation. And of course, any CAD, the functionality that I showed you just now that enables you to work with external file formats and export to different file formats even without creating those files. So now that we're back online, we can have a look at those areas, and maybe let's check out those areas in the pump assembly. So you have here the generative design, which connects you to an AI to solve geometric problems based on loads, manufacturability, materials, and physical properties that you need your component to solve. This actually works most of the time, or most of our customers use this for part consolidation. If you want to create one part out of several different components and make one out of it, or lightweighting especially. In the rendering environment, for example, if we switch into here, then of course you can elect to render this piece directly on your hardware, and I'm working on a laptop, so you don't need a supercomputer to create renderings. But if you want to continue work at the same time, then you can elect to render this image straight on the cloud, and say, I want to have this this image in 2000 times 1000 pixels, for example, and then you can either render this locally on your machine or on the cloud. And if you switch to simulation, then in here you will see there are several different simulation types that you can use inside Fusion. And the more advanced ones of electronic cooling, structural buckling, nonlinear static stress, event simulation, and shape optimization all have this little cloud icon in the bottom right corner, which mean that they require the cloud to be able to be solved, because they are usually so intensive, especially things like event simulation, that you just require more power. And the great thing about this is that you can set up these simulation types and let them run in the cloud in parallel to you just continuing to work. So this saves you a huge bunch of time and resources. All right, so this already basically wraps up what we're talking about inside Fusion. And now I want to give you just a brief overview of what's going to come into Fusion. And we just recently, just about a week ago, released a new roadmap. And one part of this roadmap is centered around collaboration and data management, lifecycle management. So we have listened for a long time, of course, to our customers, and we have heard all of your requirements and your wishes. And there are a lot of amazing features that you will be able to experience inside Fusion sometime soon. That can entail item numbering, release and revision management, change orders and workflow management. You have a consistent data experience where you will be able to access your files straight from Fusion. You can design concurrently at the same time with different users and implicitly reserve certain file types. And please note, of course, because this is a roadmap and this is a preview, basically, we cannot promise that these features will come into Fusion, but we do communicate them. So what I want to make you aware of in the browser over here, if we switch into the Fusion 360 roadmap, and let me just Google that really quickly. The last roadmap update here for 2020 is on our Fusion blog. So I would really encourage you to have a look at this. There's an overview of the areas that were recently implemented since the last roadmap update. And here is what we're working on. And here you will see the part with collaboration and data management. And you can read about all of the projects that are currently in progress and a little preview of what that might mean. So I'm super, super excited about the future of Fusion. Fusion is constantly being updated. That's another big advantage of it being cloud connected. You don't have to wait for service packs or things like that. You're always working with the most up-to-date version of Fusion, and that will always give you the access to the most up-to-date and cutting-edge tools. So with that...
Well, actually, just before, Jonathan, there was two more questions that came in that I just want to quickly touch on, if possible. So the first one was, is there a desktop connector for Mac computers?
That is a good question. I'm actually not sure, because I work on Windows only. Have you tried downloading the desktop connector for Mac? If so, I'm actually unsure about this question. So please, if you do have questions, send us a mail like that, and we'll get back to you with more information.
Absolutely.
And this is exactly that last slide. If you do have any questions or any requirements, if you want to have a demo, for example, you can contact us like that.
Yeah, and there was one other question, which I know we're kind of pressed for time now. The other one was, can geometry changes be made in Fusion that work back to the original SolidWorks files?
No, unfortunately not. So the history trees um, of different CAD vendors basically are unfortunately not communicated with the file type. So what we enable and what we see with the AnyCAD functionality is that our customers do live in an environment where you might have to work with different types of software, maybe even at the same time. And we do actually see a lot of customers who have different tools for different areas of their work. So if you do need to require to make changes constantly to the original file with the history, then you can just do this in your other software. So for example, in Inventor or something like that. And then using Desktop Connector, for example, it'll automatically update in your Fusion files. You can, however, if you want to, make edits to the files that you import. So this is an area which is called direct modeling. It's not necessarily part of this webinar, but we have technology that enables you to make direct edits to the models that you import inside Fusion.
Perfect. Well, I know that we're pressed for time, but I would like to say thank you very much for everyone who's actually attended the webinar today. If we haven't been able to kind of get to everyone's question, like Jonathan mentioned, please email this email here, whether it's technical questions or if you actually want to speak to someone like myself, as a product specialist to try and arrange a demonstration. Because obviously we've touched on so many different aspects of Fusion, but there's also the modeling capabilities and everything else within inside Fusion that we haven't even looked at today. So if we've piqued anyone's interest in that side of things as well, we'll be happy to kind of get a demo. And yeah, look, thank you again. The recording will be sent out. I'm not quite sure when, but once it's uploaded into the cloud, we'll give you guys the recording as well. So thank you again, and have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.